Botswana is a beautiful country. It is one of the top safari destinations in Africa. It has some spectacular nature, some spectacular wildlife, and it is no wonder that millions of people visit this country every single year. But what do you need to know before you go to Botswana? What about logistics, things like visas, entry documents, vaccinations, health recommendations? What is the best time to go to Botswana, and what can you see and do once you're there? So in this video, I'm going to answer all of those questions and more, so you have everything that you need to know to travel to Botswana in one video. If you're new here, hi, my name is Laura, and I've spent the past few years traveling all over the world to places like Kenya, Tanzania, Pakistan, France, Switzerland, and so much more. I also work in the tourism industry, and in this channel, I typically share lots of travel vlogs, travel guides, and hidden gems. So if that sounds like something you like, make sure you subscribe for more, and now let's get back into the video. The first thing that you need to know when you visit a country is if you need a visa to enter. So in the case of Botswana, citizens from most European countries and citizens from most Commonwealth countries do not require a visa for stays up to 90 days. So if you're entering Botswana purely for tourism and you're from a European country or a Commonwealth country, in most cases you will not have to do a visa. However, there are some exceptions. So for example, Nigeria, Ghana, India, and Pakistan are all Commonwealth countries, but citizens from these countries do need a visa to enter Botswana for tourism purposes. So like I said, there are exceptions, so make sure you double check and you research your own nationality and your own passport to see if you need a visa or not. There's actually a great website for this called Passport Index, which gives you so much information on passport rankings, what countries you can go to visa-free with your passport, what countries you cannot, what requirements you need to enter each country, etc., etc. It's really a great website to be informed on your passport, so I'll link that in the description. And I will also link the website for Botswana immigration so you can get the official source as well. In the case that you do need a visa to enter Botswana, you should get a visitor's visa or a tourism visa, and requirements usually are pretty simple. So you need a valid passport, often with at least 6 months remaining, passport size photos, a flight itinerary, proof of accommodation or address in Botswana, and a return of ticket or proof of onward travel. For minors who are traveling with only one of their parents and not both of them, a certificate of birth may be needed, or alternatively a consent affidavit, so just to make sure that this child has permission to travel from both parents. You cannot get a visa on arrival to enter Botswana, so this is very important. You do need to do all of your visa documents beforehand, but there is an e-visa system, so in most cases you will be able to do this online. I'm not entirely sure if there are some situations where you might need to go to an embassy. I am personally from a European country that does not require a visa, so I don't really have personal experience in this. But from what I've researched and from what I've been told, in most circumstances, you only need to do an e-visa and you can do all of your visa processing online. So moving on to vaccination requirements. A lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa require certain mandatory vaccines for travelers, and there is good reason for this. So mostly this concerns the yellow fever vaccine. In Botswana, a yellow fever vaccine is mandatory if you are coming from a country with yellow fever transmission risk. So basically, there are two types of countries in the world: those at risk of yellow fever transmission and those without risk of yellow fever transmission. The countries at risk of yellow fever transmission include most sub-Saharan African countries and also most countries in South America. So the best way to explain this really is through examples. So I'm going to give you a few scenarios of people traveling, and I'm going to tell you if in their situation they would need a yellow fever vaccination or not, because I think it's just easier to understand that way. So imagine that you're traveling from the UK to Botswana directly with no layovers, nothing. It's a direct flight. The UK is not a country at risk of transmission for yellow fever, so in this situation, you do not need to present a yellow fever vaccination certificate. Now, imagine that you travel from the UK to Zimbabwe and from Zimbabwe to Botswana. Zimbabwe is a country at risk of yellow fever transmission. So in this scenario, you would have to present a mandatory yellow fever vaccination certificate. And if you do not have this vaccination certificate, you will not be allowed entry into Botswana and you could be deported. But there's a couple other scenarios that you need to be aware of. So imagine that you traveled to Tanzania many, many years ago. Tanzania is a country at risk of yellow fever transmission. So let's imagine that you traveled there, you did not get vaccinated, and you traveled back to your country of origin. Let's say it's the UK, just to keep things simple. And then you decide in 2025 or 2026 to travel from the UK to Botswana on a direct flight. In this scenario, you do need to present a yellow fever vaccine certificate because even though you're not traveling directly from Tanzania, which is a country at risk of transmission for yellow fever, you have been there previously. So in this situation, you have to present a vaccination certificate. And lastly, imagine that you're traveling from the UK to Botswana, but you're not traveling on a direct flight. And let's say that you do a layover in South Africa, which again is a country at risk of yellow fever transmission. Depending on the duration of your layover, you might need a vaccination certificate or not. So this really depends on how long your layover is. In my opinion, honestly, just get vaccinated because it's the easiest thing that you can do, and it will avoid any problems in case you're not sure that you need the vaccination, or you might think that you don't need it but end up needing it. Having the vaccination and having the vaccination certificate is going to solve a lot of problems for you, and it's just one less thing to worry about. So in my opinion, I would recommend you to get vaccinated. However, I am not a healthcare professional, so please talk to your doctor or a health professional before you make this kind of decision. It's also important to note that most sub-Saharan African countries have similar rules to this. So imagine that you want to go to Namibia or to Kenya or, Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa after your trip to Botswana. All of these countries have similar rules in place where if you have traveled to Botswana previously or any other country at risk of yellow fever transmission, you do have to present a yellow fever vaccination certificate to then go on to enter these countries, So if you're planning to travel to more African countries after your time in Botswana, you're also going to need this vaccination certificate. And also, Botswana has yellow fever, so even if you're not planning on traveling further in Africa after your trip to Botswana, it's recommended that you get the vaccine just to be protected against the disease. Exceptions are made for people who cannot get vaccinations, and also young people, particularly children under 1, are not required to get vaccinated. So if you need any sort of exemption for medical reasons, you also need to contact a doctor and have a kind of certificate. I'm not exactly sure how that works because I personally chose to get vaccinated, but you have to talk to a healthcare professional and basically have a healthcare professional say that you cannot get vaccinated and why. I will leave a link to the NHS website that talks about this. The NHS is the National Health Service in the UK, so they have a specific travel page with basically health advice for people who are traveling to Botswana, and they have all of the information on vaccines as well as other health concerns. So I will leave that link in the description so you can get all of your information from an official, reputable source. So now let's talk about other health recommendations in Botswana. So these are not things that are mandatory. These are not obligations. They are simply recommendations for your own safety. So malaria is present in Botswana, particularly in the north, and it is present in some very touristic destinations in Botswana, such as the Okavango Delta or Chobe National Park, especially during the rainy season. So it is recommended that you use prophylactic measures, so that you take malaria tablets basically to prevent getting malaria, and that you also take precaution with mosquitoes. So mostly bringing insect repellent and being particularly careful at sunrise and at sunset, which is when mosquitoes tend to be the most active. It is also recommended that you practice general food and water safety, so don't drink tap water, don't use tap water to brush your teeth, always consume only bottled water or filtered water, and when it comes to food, try not to consume anything that is raw, and if you do, make sure that it is washed with bottled water. But generally speaking, it is better if you consume foods that are cooked. So cooked meat, cooked vegetables, try to avoid salads. Fruits are generally okay, those kinds of things. So again, I am not a doctor, I'm not a healthcare professional, so make sure you talk to one about these issues and make sure you use official sources to inform yourself about these issues, such as the NHS link that I left in the description. So moving on, let's talk about money and currency in Botswana. So the local currency in Botswana is the Botswanan pula, which, fun fact, pula actually means blessing or rain in Setswana, which is the local language spoken in the country. And I think that is so fascinating to me, but it also makes so much sense that the word for blessing, rain, and money is the same in a country that, is very dry, doesn't get rain very often, and that is mostly desertic. So I thought that was very interesting, so just putting that out there. But anyways, you can find several pula banknotes, so 10 pula, 20 pula, 50 pula, 100 pula, and 200 pula banknotes, and there are also some coins. As of right now, $1 is roughly 13.5 Botswanan pula, and €1 is not quite 16 pula, so 15 and a lot. These things change, so make sure you double check this before you travel to Botswana because exchange rates can vary pretty widely. But anyways, dollars are also accepted in tourist settings, so they are not accepted in day-to-day transactions, in gas stations, local restaurants, local shops, things like that. Places like that don't accept US dollars or euros or any type of foreign currency. You do have to use pulas for that, but in high-end tourist lodges or tourist shops, tour operators tend to offer their prices in euros and dollars, and they tend to accept these currencies. So it's always a good idea to bring some dollars with you when you travel to Botswana. And honestly, this is pretty general across sub-Saharan Africa. So generally speaking, when you travel to countries in sub-Saharan Africa, bringing a few dollars is a good idea. When it comes to credit cards, Visa, MasterCard are typically accepted in many hotels, lodges, and in urban areas. However, many remote places will not accept credit cards and they are cash only. So again, it is a good idea to bring some cash with you, both in dollars and also in pulas. If you're finding this video useful, I would like to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and it's a little bit cheeky of me to ask. I know, I'm so sorry, but I'm trying really, really hard to grow my YouTube channel and create good videos for you guys. So if you could like, comment, subscribe, especially subscribe, that would honestly mean the world to me. So it's just a little button that you have to click, and I'm truly so grateful for it. So if you could go ahead and subscribe, that would be amazing. And if not, I completely understand, so no worries about it. And now let's get on with the video. When it comes to safety in Botswana, the country is pretty safe. There's nothing that I would say you have to consider that is extra, other than your typical safety recommendations when you travel absolutely anywhere, like make sure you don't show off your valuables and make sure you know where your money is and you keep it safe, things like that. I wouldn't say that there's anything special that you have to do in Botswana. What I would say is that if you travel to Botswana, and particularly if you're doing safaris, you're going to travel to some really remote places. So I would pack some medications in case you need anything. You might not find a pharmacy to buy medicine from, so just make sure you bring it with you in case you, again, have an emergency. Make sure you have good health insurance in case you need it, because, again, really remote places. And in wildlife lodges and in wildlife parks, make sure you follow the rules that your guides give you or that the staff gives you, because they're usually there to protect your safety and to protect the environment. So there are some considerations that you should take when you travel to really remote places. But in terms of crime and things like that, Botswana is an extremely safe country. The best time to visit Botswana, particularly if you want to go on safari, if you want to see wildlife, is during the dry season. So the dry season is from May to October, and the reason why it is best is that there is less vegetation, so it is easier to see animals. Generally speaking, the more vegetation, the more grass, the more bushes, the more trees a park has, the harder it is to see animals because they have a lot more places to hide. So the dry season is generally the best to go on safari in any country, and again in Botswana that is from May to October. However, the wet season does offer some really nice things as well. So the landscape is really lush and a lot more beautiful, and if you want to see bird life, then the wet season is the time to go, because this is when birds really come out and it's when they're easier to see basically. So I personally traveled to Botswana in March, which was the rainy season, and I really, really liked it. And I also got to see a lot of animals. So if for some reason you can't travel to Botswana during the dry season and you want to go on safari, traveling during the wet season is not the end of the world, in my opinion. And lastly, let's talk about what you can see and do in Botswana. So Botswana is very, very famous for its wildlife, its wilderness, and its natural landscape. So it is a top safari destination, and most people who travel to Botswana will travel here for safari. So the main places that people visit are the Okavango Delta, particularly the Moremi Game Reserve, and also Chobe National Park. These are the most touristic places in the country and the ones that offer some of the best nature. There are actually a lot of other places that you can go for nature, such as the Central Kalahari Game Reserve or the Makgadikgadi Pans, and I actually have a video where I talk in detail about all of these places and about all of the safari destinations and national parks that Botswana has to offer. So I will link that video in the description in case you want to watch it after this one. But Botswana is so much more than just safaris, and it actually offers a lot of amazing cultural experiences, and it is a very fascinating country culturally speaking. So some things that you can do in terms of culture are visiting a traditional village. So for example, the Dakai Gare San Lodge, which is near Ganzi, offers some incredible cultural experiences. And by the way, I'm really sorry if I'm not pronouncing these places well. I'm trying my best, but it's a little bit difficult for me. You can also go see a kokotla, which a kokotla is basically a method for dispute resolution and governance, a traditional method for these things. So this offers a really eye-opening look at Botswana participatory democracy in action. So if you get the chance to see one in a traditional village, then definitely go see it because this is very, very interesting. Botswana is also home to the San culture. So the San are hunter-gatherers from this region of Africa, and there are not that many hunter-gatherers left in the world. So basically people who still hunt and gather all of their food and live completely off of nature. They don't use agriculture, they don't use cattle or cattle herding or anything like that. So this is incredibly interesting, and you can do San experiences or basically learn about San culture in the Central Kalahari, in Ghazni, and also in the, Ganzi, and the Tsodilo Hills area. And lastly, music and dance are central to Botswanan identity, and they are often performed at festivals, weddings, or community events. So if you get the chance to see this, definitely do. You can often experience music and dance in cultural village visits or also in local festivals like the Mighty Song Festival. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and before you go, I'm going to leave a couple of videos on the screen that I think you might want to watch. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you found it useful, and I really hope to see you in my next video.